I'm really excited to be here. I'm passionate about work, its future, and its deeper purpose. I'm the co-founder of Asana, a software company that makes tools that enables teamwork without email. So some of the best companies in the world use Asana as a core backbone of their communication infrastructure to enable them to accomplish much more with much less effort than they ever could before. But what I want to talk about today is two things. The first is how I find a deep, personal, almost spiritual sense of satisfaction from doing work, and a kind of radical idea around the purpose of work as being about helping others. And then in part two, move from the why of work to the how of work, and give you 3 strategies that I've found to be extremely helpful in enabling any team to accomplish much more than they formerly thought possible. In the decade I've spent studying and leading teams, this may be the best advice I have to give. So in starting by looking at the purpose of work, I want to share a personal story. For a long time, I've had this fantasy of living with a lot of people in community and getting to enjoy each other's presence and company. And so about a year ago, I moved in with 12 of my closest friends to a co-op in San Francisco in this beautiful old Victorian house. And it's been this amazing joy to come home at the end of a day and get to enjoy each other's company and share our lives with each other. But maybe even more interesting has been the satisfaction I've found watching the way that we work together. Everyone's very clear on their different responsibilities. So one person is the kitchen manager, one person is the finance manager. And sometimes I'll come home and I'll find John taking the trash out. And whenever I see him, it fills me with this deep sense of satisfaction. Not just because I don't like taking out the trash, though that's true, but because I know that he's doing that work in part as a way of taking care of me and of taking care of everyone else in the house. It feels so good to be in a community of people taking care of each other. And even when I'm on the giving end of that, when I'm handling some paperwork for the lease or something, that's not the most fun thing in the world for me to do, but it fills me with that same sense of joy. And hopefully everyone in the room has had an experience like this. Maybe it's in a family unit, or maybe in a team you've been on. Though I find that even when I travel internationally, someone will take me into their home, or I'll have some connective experience, and I'll still feel that same sense of community from someone I'd never met before. It feels so good to be in a community of people taking care of each other that I want to feel that way all the time. I really see the potential for us as a species is to awaken to the idea that we are part of a single global community, that all 7 billion of us are part of one group of people who are all taking care of each other. And that's why I've devoted my work, all of my work, to trying to take care of my fellow man. Now, you hear that and you may think maybe I work at a soup kitchen or build houses for the underprivileged. But as I mentioned, I'm a businessman and a technologist. And the reason is because I've thought critically about, given that my goal is to do as much good in the world as possible and help others as much as possible, how can I do that? I could build one house at a time. But what has amazed me so much is that technology gives us this unprecedented degree of leverage to be able to have huge amounts of impact with a very small number of people. In fact, I would say that we have this unprecedented situation where, thanks to the internet and social media and so many of the technologies that have only recently been developed, we in this room, as influencers and leaders, have a greater capacity to change the world than the kings and presidents of even 100 years ago. Wow, that's such an emboldening feeling. I've been privileged to work at 2 great companies that really epitomize that idea of leverage. The first of which was my first job out of college, was working at Google. Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Wow, that was such an amazing mission. I mean, even when the going was tough, it felt so good to know that the work that I was doing was contributing to that larger purpose. And when I left Google and went to Facebook, Facebook's mission is to make the world more open and connected. It's such an exciting thing and a joyful thing to be able to work on. And in being able to lead projects like Facebook's Like button or Facebook Pages knowing that I was helping millions and now over 1 billion people to be able to not only connect with each other, but in some cases be able to send messages into the world and spark social movements that just wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago. It's a deeply gratifying feeling. And what's beautiful is that doing these things is not mutually exclusive with making money. I once heard someone make the great analogy that in order to be a human being, we have to make red blood cells. But the purpose of being alive is not to make red blood cells. In the same way, companies need money in order to survive. But the purpose of starting a company is not to maximize profit. We're seeing this marriage of philanthropy and capitalism more and more these days. You can look at Elon Musk's company, SolarCity, which is a $3 billion public company. But the reason they exist is because they're trying to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels so that future generations can live in a better world. Or you can look at Lyft, whose mission is to be able to take the number of cars that we have on the road and decrease it, and to create more of a sense of community when we're in transit in our local cities. It was recently valued at over $1 billion. When I think about the possibilities for the future of work, I'm inspired by the idea that every individual and every business can see their work as primarily not about making money, though that is important, but first and foremost as participating in this global community, as being an act of doing work in order to take care of each other. That we are, in essence, a single community, and that all businesses are really subdepartments of one company, of one single global project with a single shared mission to help humanity thrive. It's my fondest wish for all of us in this room that we get to experience the joy and satisfaction that comes from feeling that our work is part of that larger purpose. So that's what I think of as the why of work. But now let's transition to the second part of the talk and talk about the how. And the reason the how is so important to me, I'll share a story from when I was working at Google and Facebook. At both of these companies, I felt extremely blessed to be working with some of those brilliant people I had ever met, working on these really interesting problems. And yet, we felt every day just constantly stymied and slowed down, not by anything external, but by the friction and overhead of the coordination of our own teamwork. Even though we were trying to come together in order to solve these ambitious problems and work on these really exciting missions like organizing information and making the world more connected, instead we were often spending 70, 80% of our day not doing work, but doing work about work. Sitting in meetings, reading emails, doing status updates. If you're a knowledge worker, this probably resonates with you. We spend huge amounts of time on this. It's just taking energy and time away from what we really want to be working on. And the more that I studied this problem and started to work on thinking about it with Facebook's co-founder, Dustin Moskovitz, the more we realized just how important this problem was, because really all human endeavor, whether you're talking about a small startup company or a Fortune 500 company, whether it's a nonprofit or a government, everything we do comes down to teams of people working together towards some common goal, aligning their energies in a common direction towards some shared mission. And yet the actual mechanics of doing that are so difficult that we waste a ton of time on this extraneous work. So we became really passionate about enabling teams to be able to do that more effectively. So much so that we realized at some point that we needed to make the difficult decision to leave Facebook and start a new company, Asana. So Asana's mission is to help humanity thrive by enabling all teams to work together effortlessly. What we realized is that if we could help every other group of people to be able to do their best work and be more efficient at what they do, that would be such an enormously leveraged opportunity for us to contribute to humanity by enabling all those people to give to humanity. So Asana makes software and gives people tools that allow people's tasks to be connected to their conversations and keep information in one place so that work can go much more efficiently. But regardless of the tools you use, there's a set of methodologies that we've found that any team can adopt that will make them just wildly more efficient. So that's what I want to share with you today. Both the technology and these methodologies come down to this really core observation that we made, this insight that the crux of the problems that we experience and the inefficiencies we experience at work come down to a lack of clarity. So clarity is a simple concept. It means knowing what you're doing. And yet lack of clarity is rampant in basically every organization I've ever seen. And lack of clarity leads to mistakes. It leads to disagreements about prioritization. It leads to having to sit in interminable meetings, trying to figure out what did we do last week, what are we doing this week. And so I want to share what I see as 3 key ways that you can be much more effective through clarity of purpose, clarity of plan, and clarity of responsibility. So starting with clarity of purpose. When people know not just what their marching orders are, but what is the larger context, why are they doing this work, they can make much better decisions about prioritization. And lack of clarity of purpose is extremely demotivating. So I'll share a story. At Asana, we had this one engineer who's normally extremely productive, but he was having a week where he was clearly in a funk. And I asked him if anything was wrong. And he was having sort of an existential crisis. He was like, I'm not sure what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. And so I asked, OK, well, what's the very next line of code you were planning to write? And he tells me about that. I say, well, why are you writing that? And he tells me about it's part of some function he was writing, which is part of some module. We just keep playing the why game until he says, oh, I'm doing this because it's going to enable teams to be able to coordinate more easily. And I guess that's going to allow them to accomplish their goals. And that will help humanity thrive. And I just looked at him, and he looked back at me, and he smiled, and he's like, OK. And went back to work. I was excited. So clarity of purpose gives us the information we need, as well as the motivation we need to do our best work. Second is clarity of plan. I'm sure we can all resonate with this experience of just having a lot of confusion surrounding from, did we get that thing accomplished yet? Sitting in meetings trying to figure out what's supposed to happen next. I know that I have gotten to launch days and discovered that there were like 20 different things that we had forgotten that had slipped through the cracks, and we had to scramble at the last minute. So clarity of plan is extremely important. At Asana, because we're so obsessed with helping all teams be able to accomplish their goals, we're particularly obsessed with the quality of our own teamwork. So I'll share how we at Asana do certain processes. So every time we start a new project, the first thing we do is we get everyone in a room, and we figure out what are all the steps that need to happen between now and the successful completion of our goal. We do this using Asana, but you could use any tool for this. And that's usually only half the list, because as things come up, people realize there's actually, a bunch more things that we have to do, and we add more things over time. But we don't just say them out loud or send them as an email that could get lost in someone's inbox. We religiously always add them to this single shared list. And so it has the effect that we always have a single, shared, trustworthy, up-to-date source of truth about every single thing that needs to happen between now and the successful completion of our goal. That creates this amazing sense of calm and comfort that we know nothing is going to fall through the cracks, that we can accurately predict when projects are going to be completed. And it even emboldens us to take on bigger projects than we would have otherwise, secure in our confidence that we can execute what we set our minds to. So that's the beauty of clarity of plan. And then lastly is clarity of responsibility. So there's another thing that if you work on teams, you can probably all resonate with. That experience of someone thinking someone had the ball on something, but they didn't know that, and so it didn't happen, and people were disappointed. Or worse, more frustrating, 2 people think that they're both responsible for something and end up duplicating effort. So at Asana, what we do to counteract this is we have really good clarity of responsibility. What that means is that after we've figured out that list of everything that needs to be done, everyone on the team goes through and commits to which parts of the project they're going to be responsible for, either because they're passionate about them or they want to take that one for the team. We phrase those commitments very clearly in terms of who is going to do what by when. And the beauty of that is that we know exactly when each piece of the puzzle is going to come into place. And you'll notice I said one person is responsible for each piece, not 0, not 2, 1. Apple calls this the directly responsible individual model. And what we find is that even if that person needs 10 other people to help them, having one person who has said, I'm committed to making sure this gets through the finish line is super powerful in making sure that it actually happens. And so the emergent effect of clarity of purpose, clarity of plan, and clarity of responsibility is that everyone on the teams knows what they're doing, what everyone else is doing, and why they're doing it all the time. It's an amazing feeling. I wouldn't say we're perfect, but the more that we invest in these processes, the more we find that in our own teamwork, it's like we're working like a perfectly coordinated orchestra, where everything is just working in lockstep, and when one piece of the project is complete, the next person is just ready to take it to the next step. We're just able to accomplish more and more quickly all the time. The reason I'm so passionate about this kind of clarity is that the difference between a team that lacks this clarity and a team that does know what they're doing is the difference between a team of people who have grand ambitions that remain pipe dreams and a team of people who are able to succeed in contributing their unique gifts to the world, in participating successfully, in being able to help everyone else and participate in this community, to actually succeeding at helping humanity thrive. The thing I would wish most for all of us in the room is that we get to experience both the joy of feeling like our work is successfully contributing and participating in this global community and in helping our fellow man, as well as to receive the gifts of having 7 billion other people and countless organizations doing work in order to take care of us. Thank you.